Hello friends, it's Sandy here. Welcome back to our cooking channel. Today we are going to share our absolutely most favorite ooey gooey cinnamon bun recipe. Okay, so we are starting with 3 cups of milk into a saucepan because we are going to scald these ingredients together. So 3 cups of milk, 6 tablespoons of butter, 6 tablespoons of sugar, and 1 tablespoon of salt. And you're going to add some heat under that and stir it constantly until it comes to a rolling boil. And you'll start to see the bubbles come around the outside edge really close to the side of the saucepan first. And then be ready, because see what happens? All of a sudden, it starts to skyrocket and you have to turn the heat off really fast or it's going to bubble over and you're going to have a great mess to clean up. So then you want to set this aside and cool, and that takes about 45 minutes. So when there's about 10 minutes left, there's a couple of prep things that you can do. We're going to need 2 eggs, and we're going to smash those up in a bowl. And then we're going to take a half a cup of water into a measuring cup, and we're going to warm that up in the microwave. And just so it's warm to your touch, you're going to add 1 teaspoon of sugar to that and 2 envelopes of dry yeast. So there's 8 grams, I believe, in each of the dry yeast. So if you've got bulk or if you're using it from a bottle, 16 grams. Okay, you're going to let that sit for 10 minutes and then we are ready to get going. I'm using a 7-quart KitchenAid mixer because this does not fit in the 5-quart. This is a huge recipe. Okay, so I'm adding my cooled scalding milk, I'm adding my eggs, and then I'm going to add my yeast. But first, I'm going to pop this back into the machine, and I'm going to blend the eggs and the lukewarm butter mixture first. So I'm putting my paddle on. We're going to start with a paddle, and then once we get about 5 cups of flour into it, we will switch over to the pastry hook, and that will do our kneading for us so that we don't have to do it by hand on the counter. Okay, so you just need this on 1 or 2. You're just mixing. And my 10 minutes are up, so I'm going to add my yeast ingredients in here, scraping out and getting all that goodness out of the measuring cup. And again, we're going to mix. And so you need a total of 9 cups of flour. And I'm starting with 5. Sometimes you need a little bit more, sometimes you need a little bit less. But you're going to be able to get 5 cups in here, no problem, before it's starting to thick up a little bit. And this is a soft flour dough recipe, so it's easy. Even if you do not have a mixer, this is very, very easy to mix with a wooden spoon. You need a very large bowl, and you're going to get about 5 cups, and then you want to roll it out onto your working surface, and you're going to knead in the next 4 cups. It's much easier if you have a blender or a mixer. Okay, so I'm just adding the last little bit. There we go. And I'm going to take my paddle off. I'm cleaning as much of the dough off as I can, and I'm switching over to my dough hook. And I'm going to scrape the sides while I don't have a hook in there. You want to get all that dry flour back in. Okay, get it down there sticking where it should. Put the dough hook on, and you're going to knead this for 10 minutes. And so what I do, once I start doing this, I still have the flour out, as you can see, and I'm going to put a little bit of it into my measuring cup, and I add just enough that you can see the dough pull away from the bottom of the bowl. You'll notice it if you sit and watch it. It's in a ball, but it will be sticking to the bottom until you get just enough flour in there, and that's when you know that you have enough flour. Okay, so we're going to clean off the hook, getting as much of that dough as possible off of it. And then we are going to roll this out onto a floured work surface. Okay, get it out there, flour up your hands a little bit, and you're just going to knead it again, just a little bit, and I'm adding just a hair more flour to my hands, and also there's some on the counter, and kneading this in. And what you want is you want to be able to touch this dough with a dry, clean finger and not have it stick. If it's still sticking to your fingers when they're clean and dry, then you need to incorporate a little bit more flour. And I can tell you right now that mine is perfect. I have enough flour in it because it's not sticking to my hand. Okay, so we need to grease up a bowl. So I'm using butter out of my butter dish and a piece of wax paper. Old school, but that's how I was taught as a kid. And you want to grease up that bowl really, really well. You're going to pop your dough in there, and then you're going to roll it around so that you get grease all over it. And then what we're going to do is cover this with plastic wrap, and we're going to set it in a nice warm spot, and it's going to double in size. And if you go back and look at the blog post, I have a picture of before and after. And what I like to do is I turn our fireplace on in the living room, and I pop the dough into my chair, and it's nice and warm in there, and in an hour it's beautiful. Okay, so during that hour we have some chores to do. First, we are going to make what we call our glaze, and this is what's going to go into the bottom of the lasagna pan, and it's going to make all that gooey stuff come dripping out when we flip these out after they're cooked. So the glaze is 3/4 a cup of butter, 3/4 a cup of brown sugar, and if you want optionals, 1/2 cup of chopped pecans. You may have noticed that I doubled that recipe. This makes a ton of cinnamon buns, and they're huge. So what I'm showing you here, when you get to the cutting, I'm cutting them like 3.5 inches wide. They end up being 4 inches tall. So we double the glaze recipe so that there's enough to drip down the sides. And so what I just showed you was I'm also mixing the filling. And so that is 3/4 a cup of brown sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon and 1/2 teaspoon of cloves. And again, that's doubled. Okay, the best part about making this bread, punching down the dough. The hour is up, it's doubled in size, and so now we're ready to roll it out and make our cinnamon buns. Okay, so again, roll it out onto a floured surface, and the first thing you're going to do is take a bench knife and cut it in half. And then don't forget to flour the surface where you're going to drop the other half off, otherwise it's going to stick to your counter. So just pop a little bit of flour over there. Okay, and then we're going to roll this out with a rolling pin. And you want about, 9 by 18, something in that neighborhood. Flour up your rolling pin so it doesn't stick to it, and your counter. This is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pastry. I love working with this recipe. And if you don't want to make cinnamon buns, you can also break this up into hand-size balls and cook them exactly the same as we're going to cook these or bake them. They make the best buns. They are so soft and fluffy. Great for Thanksgiving and Christmas or Easter. Any special occasion where you have lots of people to help you eat them, because this makes a huge amount. There's like 18 to 24 cinnamon buns in this recipe, and they freeze really well too, so it's worth making a big batch. Okay, so I have the dough as big as I want it. I nuked my butter a little bit in the microwave. You do not want it runny. You want it just pliable so that you can use your knife and spread it out. And you want a nice thick layer. Don't be stingy with the butter. I'm English, we're never stingy with the butter. And you want to make sure you get all the way to the edges too, because this helps keep it closed. Okay, so laying out all that butter. And when you get it all done, then we're going to switch over to our dry ingredients, and we're going to add those. Some people combine the butter and the brown sugar and cinnamon together and mix it that way and put it on, which is fine. You can do that. I just prefer to do this way. I don't know why. Maybe just it's the way I was taught. I've been making cinnamon buns since I was, 10, 12 years old? And I'm in my 60s now, so I've made a lot of cinnamon buns. Okay, make sure you get all that goodness right to the edge, because nobody wants that last piece that doesn't have any gooey goodness in the middle. Now we're going to roll it up. You just want to start at one end and work your way down and then back. And just keep rolling. This is really easy to roll because the dough's so soft. Okay, and I'm just going to move some of the excess stuff out of the way because I need to bring my pan in. This is my lasagna pan, and it is huge. Okay. You want a tall pan. These things get so big that you want the edges of the pan, and this one's a 9 by 18 by about 4 inches, I think. It's big. And you want the edges tall because the cinnamon buns rise. There's another hour of rising coming, and then we're going to bake. And both those times, the cinnamon buns are going to rise. And if you've got something really, really short that you're cooking them in, then the outside edge of the cinnamon buns are going to get kind of tough and overcooked. Okay, so now I am scoring off where I'm going to be cutting the dough. And the first thing I do is cut the ends off. I only cook those if I need to because they quite often don't have very much butter or cinnamon in them. And for the big batch, the one that you're going to show all your friends, you want everything to be nice and uniform. So you're going to cut into these and you're going to go 3 in a row and you're going to go 4 rows. Okay. And you're adding them to the sauce that we poured into the bottom of the pan. And don't forget to reserve a little bit of that glaze because there's going to be more than this amount of cinnamon buns. And so you'll see as we get on here, I'm going to do a second bowl, white one, a round one, and I'm going to add the remaining ones into that one. So the second piece of dough, we're going to do exactly the same thing with it. We're going to roll it out so it's about 16 by 18 or 9 by 18. And try and get that as even as possible because then you get the uniform shape of your buns by having the uniform shape of these. Okay, so adding the rest of the butter. And really you just have to slap it on there. And then the rest of the filling. Okay, and you're just going to put it on there as evenly as you can. I'm using a big spoon. If nobody's watching or taping me, I often just use my fingers. This is a messy dough. Okay, rolling this up. And again, we're going to chop it up. This one's not quite as even on the ends, so I'm going to cut the ends off again. And scoring where I want to do my cutting. And I have sped this up, obviously. Okay, so there's one for the middle, and then I need 3 more for this one. These are so good, you guys. Once you taste these, you're going to throw away every other cinnamon bun recipe that you have. Okay, that's ready for the second rise. And then here's my, quiche pan or whatever the heck you call it. I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm also going to spray the inside of this one with the pan. I sprayed the other one as well. You don't want them sticking. And then the rest of the glaze is going into the bottom of this. So you want to mix that up a little bit. The butter and the sugar like to separate. So you just spread it out with a spatula, making sure that there's a little bit all the way across the bottom so that each one of your cinnamon buns is going to get a little bit of that gooey mess on the bottom of it, which ends up being the top because we invert these once they come out of the oven. Okay, and these ones, my husband likes pecans. I don't. So only half of the recipe gets pecans. And you can chop these. He likes his whole. If you chop them, they stick better. The whole ones have a tendency to fall off. Okay, so we're going to cover both of these with clean kitchen towels. Let them rise for another hour. In that hour, you're going to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and then you're going to pop them in there, and you're going to bake them from 35 to 40 minutes. I quite often bake them at 35, 36. I like them at about that temperature, and then they're not over-baked. Okay, so we're just going to pop these all in here. Kind of make sure you leave enough room for them to rise. Okay, and then bake them. And here they are baked. These are awesome. Okay, so you're going to bring this up on the counter. Put a cookie sheet on top of them and flip it over really fast. And make sure you flip it away from you, just in case some of the butter splatters out. Shake them really well, and there you go. There's the cinnamon buns. They're awesome. And you got all that gooey goodness sitting there. And then you can ice them. I also give you the recipe for the cream cheese icing, which you want to put on after they are pretty much cooled. All right, that's it. Enjoy.